Stuart Lee joins us now. Good morning, Stuart.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for doing this.
Are you in Edinburgh?
Yeah, I'm in Edinburgh now, right now.
Right now.
Do you know how many Edinburghs you've done?
I think I've done 30 fringes out of the last 36.
Right. How was it? Yeah, go on.
Well, it's strange. I reached a kind of tipping point this year. I think it's actually a bit depressing because, you know, the older you get, the less things are like they were when you were young.
Right.
Yeah.
I keep walking around and all the places I used to go to that have closed and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's kind of... Normally I arrive here and I'm really instantly happy, but this year I have a little slight feeling of, oh, that's gone.
Yeah.
Well, presumably it was. There were many years of hedonistic rush, were there?
Yes, there were. And I stayed out quite late last night to see a show that finished at about 1 a.m, and I was very, very tired indeed.
Well done.
Well, thank you for getting up early and doing this. And I think we had a correspondent earlier on who thought they might have seen... Well, it was their first experience of you at Edinburgh in 1994, so it might have been one of your first Edinburghs, I guess, then.
No, I started in 87.
Oh, my God!
Yeah, I was already really jaded and tired by it. I did a show in an attic, and I was on at 11 in the morning, and Graham Norton was on before me at, I think, 9:30, something like that. So I know exactly where that was. And I made loads of sandwiches and put predictions of people's futures inside them, like fortune cookies, and then handed them out. And the audience was small enough for me to be able to do that every day.
That's brilliant. Did you guess correctly that Graham Norton would disappear into obscurity?
It was very nice, actually, in the handovers. I was looking, I must have been around to watching his show and never did. But anyway, there you are. Yeah.
Right, what time of day are you on at the moment?
Well, I'm on at 1:50 in the afternoon. I'm gradually moving up I've moved up in the evening during the north. Now I'm retreating back towards the morning.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about this fantastic rewriting of the Porter scene from Macbeth and other things in a little while, but how about we start with your first, as it is, which brilliantly... Well, you tell us what your earliest... Is this your earliest musical recollection?
No, well, this is the first single I bought. I mean, there was the Rubettes, Sugar Baby Love. I remember it was on the telly. I thought it was fantastic. And my mum said she'd walk me up to Woolworths and Shirley High Street to buy it. And my granddad, who we lived with at the time, was disparaging from a aspect of sexuality regarding the singer's voice, I remember. as people were in those different times. And then years later, one of my first gigs ever out of town, 1989, was at High Wycombe Town Hall. And I was in the little room. And the Rubettes and Alvin Stardust were in a really massive room next door. And I accidentally went into their green room.
Right.
And Alvin Stardust and the Rubettes had, dozens of trays of sandwiches.
Yeah.
Luxurious. And I had nothing. And I stole some of the Rubette sandwiches and ate them. So that's the two things that I've had.
Did he put messages in those sandwiches and send them back to the green room?
No, I didn't, because they were well aware of what their future was by that stage.
I see.
I Wycombe Town Hall with Alvin Stardust.
Right. Were you tempted to buy a Rubette-style cap?
Not as a child, but I think I could carry one off now.
Exactly. And I remember there was some strangeness about the man who sang on the record isn't the guy you see in the Rubettes on Top of the Pops, is he? Something like that.
It's a Milli Vanilli scandal, is it?
It's not, no, there's no hint of, but anyway.
Let's... That.
Right, okay.
No, it's true. Let's.
I love the fact that Sugar Baby Love is from their first album, which is called Where It's At. Do you get it?
I get it very much so. Yeah, here it is. Oh, that sounded tremendous. Sugar Baby Love. Doesn't it still sound great?
Yeah. What do you call? I mean, you're on top of this sort of thing, Stuart. You know, they have all these like record collector invented genres now, like junk shop glam and boot and punk and stuff. What do you actually call that?
I would call that falsetto stompathon. Or words to that effect. Yeah, it's hard to.
It's a kind of glam doo-wop.
It's a glam doo-wop record, isn't it?
I wrote down doo-wop, but it's kind of got like a cosmic sort of element to it as well, isn't it? A bit like it's cosmic doo-wop.
Cosmic doo-wop, but that's a good genre.
Yeah, it's a bit like it has got an element of Amon Dull, definitely. So
Amon doo-wop.
Wow, nice. That was Sugar Baby Love by the Rubettes, bought on Shirley High Street. Can you remember the name of the record shop, Stuart?
You said Woolworths.
It was
Woolworths. very good.
Did you get a pick and mix while you were there?
You get your records, get your pick and mix.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you know your Macbeth, you will know that about halfway through the grisly and bloody affairs, there's a sort of darkly comic scene with a porter. And Stuart Lee, our guest tonight, you've rewritten this for the RSC. So just tell us about all of this. I'm fascinated by this.
Say that they did ask me to do that. I didn't just. Okay, look, all the Shakespeare plays have normally got a clown in who comes and does a funny bit. And the thing is, a lot of the funny bits are the jokes. For example, the porter's jokes are about. They're supposed to help us understand morality and moral judgment, whatever, but they're about a tailor who was able to exploit the changing fashion between French and English trousers, to cut off some fabric, which he then saved money on, and also a very specific man who gave false evidence in the trial of Guy Fawkes or something. And middle class people go and see these and they laugh along at the right points as if they understand them, and they don't, right? There's no way anyone would know what those are about unless they've done like a degree in Shakespeare. So Wills Wilson at RSC said, can you sort of jig this a bit so that it does what the clown in Shakespeare always used to do, which was turn up and be funny for 3 minutes. So that's sort of what I've tried to do. Yeah. And they're rehearsing it now. So I just had to find things that were sort of analogous from now. That would work, but it's been really good fun, and I know Shakespeare has really appreciated the input that I've had.
And so in the absence of French hose, what are some of the things?
Oh, don't give it away though.
No, but okay. Do you not want to give?
Things like hedge fund managers shorting the pound. Any number of politicians at the moment that are on the take for various things, and and then also the audience itself, I think, which is probably the most me thing of it, that the porter attacks the audience who go to the RFC for thinking that they can improve their lives by having cultural currency. And I think that.
Yeah.
So,
he does. It's some of the bits are quite broad in his line. Basically, it's about where he says, "Isn't it? Drinking provokes lechery, urine, and face painting." Yeah.
He puts urine last because that's the funniest thing.
Yes.
That's why you're not a professional comedian.
You'll see why Shakespeare sacked me as his punch-up gag writer. Yeah. Yeah. But it's and as he said, there's this stuff about equivocation, but it is still quite dark, isn't it? I guess yours will be too.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. I mean, the great thing about it is that the character comes out, addresses the audience directly, and then sort of drops seamlessly back into the thing. So it really is like stand-up. And the director said, "Oh, maybe it's the first bit of stand-up, that's recorded." And we don't really know how exactly these things were done. I know different comedians would have done that part in different shows and probably brought their own thing to it, but yeah, it does feel like stand-up.
And it definitely
is the porter to the gates of hell. Is it the door to hell? Is that right?
Well, he's the porter to the gates of the castle, but he's sort of imagining he's the gates of hell, isn't he? Yeah. But also it's the first knock joke, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is knock, and he sort of it does not. It's not set up quite in the same way, but yeah, it's a knock joke.
Yeah. Okay, the Lilac Time. Tell us about the band.
Can I just ask if this is on at the moment? Is it?
I was going to come back to that. I was going to come back to that. Press night is on Wednesday the 30th, isn't it? Then it runs. Well, we'll do all that. We'll do all that.
Okay.
But,
all right. Okay.
Tell us about the Lilac Time.
Well, the Lilac Time go way back, don't they? They were the Subterranean Hawks that Stephen Tintin Duffy was in the 70s with Dave, with the people that ended up in the Jacobites and those kind of characters. Then he was the first singer, I think, of Duran Duran.
Boss, yeah.
And then had a big. It was a one-hit wonder of Stephen Tintin Duffy, and which was
"Kiss Me."
Yeah, which I think was from the Song of Songs in the Old Testament, wasn't it? And the Lilac Time, he's been doing like 30 odd years. This kind of rather gentle folk rock group. And what I loved is this album came out of nowhere for me. Really, someone recommended it, and I heard it, and it's one of those great records, a bit like Dylan's Time Out of Mind, of someone that's got to a certain age and is entirely comfortable with himself and is looking back and reflecting on their life and what life means and politics and whatever. And this one particular song, the band that nobody knew, the hook is it's obviously based on some sort of conversation where he's talking to someone and they've vaguely got an idea that he nearly had a hit once and they can't quite place him. It just makes you think, like, what is life about and what's the legacy? What do we leave behind and how are we judged? And the hook that comes in at the end is someone saying to him, what was the name of your band? What was the name of your hit, of your song? When did you play Barrowlands and where do you think it went wrong? If no one said he totally sort of failed in life. It's blackly comic and really, really moving.
Let's hear a little bit. Our guest is everything. The band, last I should say, I'm struggling to, was the band that nobody knew, an album that came out in July of this year, Dance Till All the Stars Come Down. His voice has got a kind of grain that it didn't used to have before, hasn't it?
The lovely lyric, remember our time in the shade, he says, rather than our time in the sun, and no one but them ever got paid. And that's got like loads of people. It took me 18 years of doing the Fringe to break even, so
wow.
I hope you recognise that sort of, that feeling about your career in life.
Are your quids in this year?
Just about. Although, the thing is, I mean, this is one of the things about being in the Fringe this year that is sad also, is when I came up in 1987 for the first time, what's now a posh gallery was Infirmary Street public baths, where there was loads of swimming, bath cubicles and showers and stuff, because enough people in Edinburgh still didn't have those.
Yeah.
That meant you could sleep on the floor in a church hall for free. Obviously, you could get a housing benefit. Students were massively in debt. Everything, rents were cheap. There wasn't Airbnb. And this was a good place in 1987 to have a festival, because it was cheap to come to. And here we are today. Everyone's massively in debt. Rent's impossibly expensive. Because of various economic and educational policies, people are basically being frozen out of the arts as performers and consumers unless they've got financial backing. So the whole thing does feel quite different in that way.
Yeah, I saw something the other day about the best jokes of this year's Fringe, tweeted like before the Fringe had begun, and clearly have been PR'd into people's Twitter feeds, haven't they?
Yeah, well, PR in the 80s was you put up a poster, and if it was in colour, you were a bit arrogant.
Well, so is it basically that you're doing in Edinburgh, Stuart?
Yeah. It's a show. I'm halfway through touring it, and then I finished the tour of it in the spring of next year.
What are you coming on to at the moment, if you see what I mean? What music? I actually walk onto a sort of blues track that I got recorded for me by Blues Water. But actually, weirdly, before the show this year, I'm playing lots of fall songs that just get me in the mood. Oh, okay. Well, that would seem the perfect point then to say. We should say before we play your last track, the Porter scene that you've rewritten for the RSC's new production of Macbeth is. I mean, I'm not sure if this presumably has been done before, but it's a female actress, Alison Peebles, who's doing it.
Yeah. And that's really great. I mean, she's in the early 60s, and she brings a different sort of quality to it. And it's a really good piece of casting, actually. And I'm glad the decision was made before I got involved, because I immediately started stressing about all different sorts of stand-ups and how maybe you should have 3 people in rotation and all. So she's really good. Yeah.
And has this sort of unleashed something in you? Are you going to rewrite The Tempest next or something?
No, it hasn't. It's a nice thing to have, but my sort of ambition for the future is to write a new show every 2 years, do 250 dates of it around the country, and then write another one. And I'm really, really lucky to have got to that point and to see that as a way forward. And I really feel it this year, because there's people of my generation have either stopped coming to the Fringe to do stand-up because it's too costly for them, or they did well enough to feel they didn't need to, which I always find slightly strange. And there's a lot of people struggling for audiences who've been coming for years and years, and it is hard. So I'm really happy with what I've got and really lucky to be able to carry on doing it, I think. That's
lovely. Well, that's the RSC will be the production of Macbeth featuring the new rewritten Porter scene. It opens next Saturday, it says here, and then goes on till the 14th of October. And also there's you recently did that excellent BBC Radio 4 doc about the Birmingham Surrealists, which is at BBC Sounds. Yeah, that came out really well, that. And Ruth Billington, the sort of art expert in it, was really great. And we had really good fun doing it. Basically just wandered around Birmingham looking at places where surreal things happened. Yeah. And and as we've said, basically continues to tour and will be till April of next year, but is in Edinburgh right now. You mentioned the Fall. Tell us about your love for the Fall and the track you've picked for us, Stuart.
Well, it's lots of things you think, what's the best film of all time? What's the best book of all time? I don't know if Hex Induction Hour by The Fall is the greatest album of all time, but it's the album that I will always love more than anything else. And because it arrived at a point in my life where I really, really needed something. And I realised what I needed now was to be shouted at by a belligerent man about bewildering things over a bracket. And it's still, I know every note of it, and it excites me so much. And it inspired me to want to be a writer and a performer and to read all the things that he alluded to. And it's just great. Everyone's got a thing like that. And for me, it was this.